Hello, people. Andrew here, talking about comics from a reader, collector, speculator, investor point of view. That order of importance to myself. 1938, John W. Campbell writes a story called Who Goes There? It's based on, the idea is it's a research expedition set in the Antarctic. They're researching some stuff to do with the magnetic pole. It's a crew of 37 men, and they have a team of just under 70 dogs. They have 4 cows and 1 bull. They're researching the magnetic pole, and they discover a spaceship that has been buried under ice for 20 million years. Alongside that spaceship, it looks like once it crashed, that one occupant managed to get out of the wreckage, but didn't last very long, crawled about 10 feet away from it, and he too, or it too, froze in the ice 20 million years ago. They decide to cut this thing out of the ice, bring it back to the research facility, debates whether or not they should thaw it or not, or just destroy it. Eventually, weigh out that they'll try and thaw it and do some research on it. The idea being that if they try to ship it back to the States, it could deteriorate in the process and a great deal of scientific information could be lost. So they decide to do a gradual thaw of it. And during this process, they begin to understand a little bit more about this entity, and it is truly horrifying in that it is still alive. Not only is it alive, but it can separate into separate parts. So one part could be dead, the other part could be alive. And what it does is it seeks out warm-blooded hosts, the dogs, the cows, the humans, and infects them. Infects them in such a way that it actually takes them over. It replicates in their cell structure and, in effect, becomes them. So you're looking at your friend sitting across from you is no longer your friend. He's actually your friend, but he's the thing. The thing also has telepathic abilities, so it's able to read minds. So when it duplicates a human, it can act like that human would act, even though it itself is a thing. So the story centers around this expedition trying to figure out just who has become infected, who's a thing, and who's not a thing, and what to do about this thing. It seems pretty impervious to a lot of damage. One of the things I liked about, well, I liked a lot of things about the story, but one of the things that was kind of grisly and kind of a chilling idea is the idea that the cows, they became infected by the thing, and there is a period where they kill all of the animals on the base. And the thought occurs to one of them, says, how long have we been drinking thing cow milk? And that's kind of a creepy sort of idea. In 1951, the book was adapted into a film. It retained a lot of what was in the book itself. It is an expedition team. It is in the Antarctic. They do discover a thing, and it does infect people, but it's a lot different in its appearance and also in its nature. It's more of a vegetable type of creature and sends out spores to infect the hosts. It doesn't look at all like it's described in the book, because the book describes it as having 3 red eyes and blue hair that looks like worms. And the thing in The Thing from Another World in 1951 looks more like a giant carrot. Still, it did all right in the theater, and it became somewhat of a cult favorite for a while. Now it's just recognized as one of the better science fiction films to come out of the 50s. And it became somewhat of an inspiration to remake The Thing in 1982. Now, John Carpenter was given a bigger budget, his first time out with a big budget, having some success with Halloween and Escape from New York. And he was a fan of the original film, and he said, I don't want to remake that film. What I want to do is I want to look at the original book, Who Goes There, and I want to stick closer to that story and tell my story of the version of that book. And so he comes up with, in 1982, this wonderful film called The Thing. I don't know if you've seen it or not. If you're not, it may not be your cup of tea, because it's pretty horrific and it can be pretty graphic. But I found it to be an excellent film. It is one of my favorite films of all time. I think the story is sharp. I think the acting and the directing is very good, and it leaves that sort of creepy sort of feel about it. You really are questioning who or what is the thing, and the thing itself is absolutely terrifying. I think the actors are great. It's led by Kurt Russell. There's a number of character actors in there that you may recognize their faces, but maybe not their names. Wilford Brimley, Richard Dysart, Keith David. There's a character named Windows, and he's played by Thomas G. Waits. And just I'm referencing him because he was also in Walter Hill's 1979 film The Warriors, playing the character of Fox. You don't see him in too many things, but I did like The Warriors as well, so I just make mention of that. So I liked all of the acting. I liked all of the character actors. I liked the setting. I liked the mood. I liked the music. I liked the music so much that I bought the CD. And the music is written and done by Ennio Morricone, very famous for the spaghetti westerns, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, amongst other things. I believe he also did the Untouchables, the soundtrack for that one too. A great composer. His music in this one is very sparse, but it's very foreboding and menacing. Very chilling soundtrack. It's not something that you would necessarily put on while you're sitting upstairs or wherever and having yourself a nice cup of tea and looking out at whatever. It's more so if you're into, perhaps you're writing a short horror story yourself, or doing some illustrations, or you're in that sort of creepy vibe. This would certainly accompany that quite well. So I like the movie. I like the directing, the characters. I like the music. And I love the special effects. The special effects are practical effects, no CGI here, done by a guy by the name of Rob Bottin. I have an image here from Fangoria. Where is that? Here it is. And anybody who's seen the film will remember the whole scene with Norris and all of the things that happen with Norris. And it's a very chilling story or scene, and you won't forget it. So I loved all of that, and you would think that with all of these high accolades, it would have done well, but it didn't. It did poorly in the theater. It made its money back. Theoretically, that's because it made about just under $20 million on a $15 million budget. So it didn't really recoup, and it set back John Carpenter's career a bit. I mean, he still went on to make other films, but given that big budget and this low return, I said, maybe not so much next time. Why did it fail? There's a number of reasons. Critics didn't like it. Critics didn't like the acting. They thought it was underdeveloped. They thought that the effects were sometimes wretched and excessive. It had a nihilistic tone to the film. The soundtrack itself was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Soundtrack of the Year. They also were competing with a film that was released just a few weeks earlier about a different kind of alien. This alien. So, E.T. came out a few weeks before the thing, and people loved E.T. It could be that they were just a little tired and a little afraid of nasty aliens that wanted to slaughter them wholesale or take them over. They were in the mood for a little bit more of a friendly alien. If the aliens are coming to our Earth, let's let them be friendly, please. A family film, went on to be the biggest grossing film of the year. It's still one of the biggest grossing films of all time. People still are familiar with it and some of the phrases. Against that, as its competition, and having critics, pan the film, the thing did not do well. But times change. and people started to watch the thing either on video, VHS, or beta, and see it in the review cinemas and take a second look at it. And they discovered that they liked it quite a lot, and it became somewhat of a cult classic. And not only did it become a cult classic, it moved on beyond that to become just considered a classic. It's now in many people's top 100 lists. It's in that 1,000 movies you've got to see before you die series of books. It's considered one of the best science fiction films, one of the better horror films, and one of John Carpenter's best films. And as I say, it's on my list of top films of all time. It's definitely continued to build, and its reputation as a great movie is only being strengthened year by year. So in 1991, Dark Horse released a series of books based on The Thing. I love this cover, by the way. There were three series. This first one is 2 issues long, and then there was a second one called Climate of Fear, and it was 4 issues long, and then a third called Eternal Vows, and it was 4 issues long as well. So there were 10 issues altogether for this period of time of The Thing from Another World. I have 6 of those 10. This is the first issue. It's got a cover by John Higgins and interior artwork by John Higgins. I don't really know much about him, but I do like this cover an awful lot. And his interior work is painted, and it is a treat to look at it and look at the artwork that he's put together. As far as the story across the board for all of these, it's based on events that would happen after the 1982 film, an extrapolation of a possibility. And in that respect, it's interesting, but only if you're familiar with the thing. If you're not familiar with the film, then the story, it's not really going to hold with you. It's not going to resonate with you. But having seen the film, of course, I found it was good. An interesting extrapolation. So I asked myself, is it a book worth reading? I'm going to go through the covers and show you the covers of these books as I'm talking about them. So this was issue number 1 of the very first series. And issue number 2 of that same series. So is it worth reading? If you're interested in a possible extrapolation of events from the 1982 film, then yes. As I said, the artwork by John Higgins in these first 2 is great. And he provides the covers for these 2 and the next set of 4, but doesn't do the interior artwork for the next set of 4. And as I said, just as an interest, a curio for that possibility. Not knowing the story, you probably wouldn't find that the story itself would be that exciting. You'd be missing a lot. First issue of the next series, Climate of Fear. There we go. I don't know. Yeah, so artwork of this was Jim Somerville. Let me just double check that. Yep, Jim Somerville did that. And the writing was Chuck Farrer on the first set, John Arcudi, and David DeVry on the third one. So from a collector's point of view, this would fit in with, if you were collecting all Dark Horse, which is a fairly large collection to get, or if you were collecting Dark Horse movie projects, or if you were collecting things to relate to The Thing. This series would all come in there. The artwork by John Higgins for the covers, you might be inspired by the covers. As I said, I really like the first one. I find that the other ones are good as well. Just I particularly like the first one. And the third series is illustrated by Paul Gulacy, who I really like. Paul Gulacy's stuff. We haven't really talked about that. I knew him from The Master of Kung Fu, but he did some other stuff in the Legends of the Dark Knight, and even his little spin on Turok was really good. So I do like the artist overall. So it would fit into a Paul Gulacy collection as well. What about speculation and investment? Well, this is the thing. I doubt very much that these books, even the first one, is going to make it on anybody's hot 10 list anytime soon. It's a kind of a niche book. Um, it's not going to appeal to everybody. I took a look online to find out what kind of prices people were asking for this book, and it varies. If it's a graded copy of 9.6, 9.8, you can get $150 to $200 or ask for that anyways. But if it's a raw copy and in sharp condition, most of them will be in sharp condition. Anywhere from $10 to $35 for issue number one, $50 for the pair. I was fortunate enough that I bought all of these so far. The only one that I bought recently was the first one from Eternal Vows. I was fortunate that I got all of my copies of The Thing from Another World in the late 90s. And in the late 90s, a lot of comic book stores had closed their doors and had sold off a ton of their inventory to the stores that remained open. And those stores that remained open now all of a sudden had a ton of inventory, and they sold tons of stuff within the dollar bins. There was one sale that I went to that was actually selling books at 10 cents a piece. And I ended up spending like $150 there over 3 visits because the sale went on for like 3 or 4 weeks. And I had been out of comics for years. So for me, it was all of a sudden I got like 1,500 comic books of material from the late 80s to the mid 90s for $150. And for me, it was all that reading material. So I got a lot of these Thing books that are really cheap cost. This one I just bought last year, and it cost me less than 50 cents because, again, I bought it on a deal. So I'm looking forward to picking up the rest of it, hopefully at the same or a similar cost. But what's it going to cost you if you're out there hunting for it? It's not that easy to find in the wild. You can go online and buy it, and as I say, they're offering prices of $25 to $50 for raw copies of this. So I don't know that I would necessarily speculate or invest in this particular book. I think it's a niche sort of book, but you might be inclined to because as time goes on, more people will find out about the movie The Thing and enjoy it, and then perhaps track down some of the comic book related material, which there's not a ton. So maybe if you find a copy in a dollar bin or a $5 bin, it might be worth your while to pick it up just for that reason. Overall, decent enough series, but you gotta have, well, you don't have to, but it's best if you have seen the 1982 film because this is a continuation of that storyline. The artwork by John Higgins in the first couple of issues is really good to look at, and I enjoy his covers for the first 6 issues. And as I say, looking forward to this one too because Paul Galassi does the artwork, so I'm looking forward to reading the rest of that one. That's about it for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again later, people. And don't forget to try and check out both of the films, the 1951 film and the 1982 film, and spend some time and read the book. Read the short story. All right. See you later.